Well, this is our third and final discussion on eHealth. I'm going to focus right here on the beginning on HIPAA. That's the HIPAA thing. I mentioned this a couple of times, but I didn't tell you what it was. So I'm going to tell you now what it is. It's called the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And it is designed in 1996. And you notice that's the same year we had the Telecommunication Act. So we were trying to get everything up to date at one time in 1996. But anyway, this was an important act because the whole point of this is to protect the confidentiality of medical data. A lot of people don't want their data to be available, and they shouldn't. I mean, it's a good thing. You want to protect your own privacy, your own ideas. Sometimes people feel that maybe if they had a bad medical record, it could be held against them employment-wise, for example. So anyway, HIPAA was introduced, and here's the main thing about HIPAA. I got 4 points here that I would make. One of them is what they call they have various rules in the HIPAA Act. One is a privacy rule, which is, I just said that this is a confidentiality thing. This is just your data. You have to give physicians, anybody else, permission to look at your data. Okay. A security rule, which is really on the responsibility of the provider to make sure that the data that you are putting up there, or he's putting up there for you, or she's putting up there for you, is secure, and people aren't going to break into it. I just said that there was 100 million records stolen in one breach. That's the kind of thing you want to avoid, and HIPAA is geared to try to avoid that. A very important part of HIPAA is the administrative simplification. Used to be that when you were filing a claim, an insurance claim, for example, it would go through 4 or 5 hands before it got to wherever it needed to go. Now, much of this can be done online, where you have fewer errors and it's much faster, and you don't have to go through so many people. And then the last one there is the breach notification rule, and that is if there is a breach in wherever your data is being stored, the company that is, if it's whatever healthcare provider you're using, it has a responsibility to notify you that it's been breached. So they have to tell you. So if it's breached, you'll get a letter. I've gotten a couple over the years when some of the places were breached. So that's the HIPAA rule. You can see that the main thing is your records are your records, and they can't be seen by anybody else. So if I start to say that somebody I know has a certain disease, I may be violating HIPAA. Okay, that gets us right into ethics, of course, the ethics of using AI, but the ethics of eHealth in general, and also global governance of the whole idea of eHealth. Because there is bias, in the data that is put in, just like in any AI model, we have to be aware that there is potential for bias, and we can't take everything that the AI bot tells us for granted. Or we can't take it, we have to check it out, okay? Idea of consent. Consent is how is that given and who can give it. And that is, you should have control over your records. And the accountability for using eHealth, that would be on the part of the provider. They have to be accountable for what they do, what they tell you, how much they charge you, and all these kind of things. So we have to get a couple of frameworks that have been kicked out there. The World Health Organization ethics policy they developed in 2023, geared, of course, toward AI, since AI has been around that long. And EU AI Act was put into force in 2024. Both of these are basically outlines for what providers should do with the AI in terms of healthcare. Okay, now, speaking of global governance, we're going to deal with some of the inequalities here. Mobile telehealth successes in Africa and Asia have been pretty tremendous in terms of chronic disease management. Somebody has a chronic disease, they can manage it easier through mobile telehealth than in the past when they didn't have any doctors or anything there in the first place. They can do remote consultations, okay, just like we can do any place else. But this is something that mobile telehealth provides. Many people in Africa and Asia don't have computers. Many of them have phones. In the United States, marginalized groups do the same thing. They will tend to have phones, but not computers. So that's why mobile telehealth becomes such a big deal, because they're dealing with these things on mobile devices, dealing with health on mobile devices rather than on a computer or going in to see the doctor. Another big one is maternal care, which is always a problem in undeveloped countries. And this is someplace, again, where remote telehealth can be very, very helpful, and it has been over the last few years since it's been implemented. Now, some of the barriers, of course, the main one here is the infrastructure. You have to have connection to these remote areas if you're going to help people with mobile telehealth. It's obvious, of course, that you have to have cell towers so that you can communicate with them. And the other one is literacy. That is, the people who are going to be using the mobile devices, can they do it? Can they understand what's going on? We call it literacy just in general because we want them to be able to use the computer, to be able to understand what the physicians are telling them so that they can actually take advantage. But this is a huge barrier, the understanding and the actual understanding of how to use the devices. Okay? All right. So we'll switch it a little bit and talk about some of the benefits there. So we've talked about this, but just sort of in concluding that, there's a lot of cost savings going on. I'm not sure who's getting the savings, but there is a lot of cost savings, and makes providers more efficient. It can make the customers or the patients much more efficient as well as looking after their own health care. And accessibility is a big accessibility of the records. Used to be your records were kept in the doctor's office. You never did see them. But now they're yours. You can see them if you want to. So this has empowered patients to be more in control of their own data. And plus, having all this data and the data being fed into AI databases, this gives us a data-driven care, which is much more reliable than just a doctor making his own decision. He can use data to help him make his diagnostics and help him make any of his decisions he has to make about your health care. So some of the challenges that we continue to have in this area would be resistance to IT. A lot of people are still not into the internet technology, or they just, what can we say? They just are not into it. And of course, then part of the reason they're not into it is that, especially in healthcare, there's so much data that you can get data overload and just be overwhelmed and not be able to get anything done. And the other issue is interoperability issue, which mostly means if we have this system, can this system talk to this system? In other words, if I have a legacy system, the system already in place, and then I put in some new AI, will it be able to talk to the stuff I already have? And that's a big deal, trying to get the software and hardware to sync up. So what's the future look like? Well, we're going to be connected, okay? And we're going to be focusing on preventive health care, which is what dentists, for example, have always done. They say want to see the dentist twice a year to prevent you from getting a disease. The rest of the medical profession has sort of caught on to that. They say, oh yeah, we're going to do that now too. We're going to look for preventative care rather than after the fact. When you come in, I'm sick, I got to go see you. Now they want you to come and see me every once in a while before you're sick, so I can keep you from getting sick. And then that will also with AI and with the informatics, we can get more personalized care. In other words, the focus can be on your specific case and not the doctor say, well, this is what most people do. No, in your case, we can focus on you and your body and all of your issues. Okay? And of course, there's going to be integration of AI in with IoT, which is, we'll talk about in another chapter, which is Internet of Things, where things talk to other things rather than talking to people. And of course, we'll talk in another chapters on big data. And we'll talk about that probably next week, I think. So got that to look forward to. Okay. The trends then from 2026 and beyond: AI integration, digital twins, which means what they can do is with AI, they can create a duplicate of the person that they're working on and then try things out on the duplicate to see if they work before they actually apply them to the person. Pretty interesting. Okay. And then of course, predictive diagnostics is a very big part of AI, the help that AI is going to give the healthcare providers. So, and also then, like you just said, preventive and home-based healthcare, more healthcare being done at home rather than you having to go to a hospital. Okay. Here's a couple of future technologies I just throw in here for the heck of it. Brain-computer interfaces, 3D bioprinting. This is printing things out in 3D so you can get a better look at them. And then AI-driven personalized medicine. So those are just three areas that we can look for. And finally, the key takeaways that we have eHealth equals communication plus technology plus human care. That's what eHealth ends up. That's what it is. Ethical AI and privacy remain priorities. And global inclusion is going to drive innovation. In other words, the more situations we see, more people we include, the more ideas that we generated and the more everybody will benefit. Okay, there's a couple of references you can look through this on the slides. But anyway, we're through with this, and that'll bring us to an end of our discussion of healthcare.